Hello and welcome back to Pro Tools Studio Advanced Automation Part 2. This time we're going to get into glide automation. And just a refresher, the newest release of Pro Tools, 2022.4, just released in April of 2022, introduces advanced automation features to what was formerly known as Pro Tools Standard. It's now Pro Tools Studio. These features were only available in Pro Tools Ultimate version. They're now available to everybody, which is a really cool thing. And here's a very handy trick that I think a lot of people may not know about. This is glide automation. And what I'm going to do here is just use the standard, the stock EQ plugin to demonstrate this. I want this EQ to morph or to change over time. It's relatively easy to automate a plugin, but it's often a very abrupt change. I want this to happen over time, and I can use glide automation to do that. So I'm going to have this EQ change over the period of one bar from a flat EQ to a very frequency confined EQ. All right, so what I'm going to do is pull up the EQ. It's set to the EQ setting that I want to start with. I've made a selection in my timeline, 1 bar long. This is how long I want these EQ parameters or changes to change. I can make this selection shorter or longer and have these parameters change over whatever selection amount I want. I'm going to do it for 1 bar right here. So I've got the EQ set. I'm going to go, and I have all the parameters enabled. So in the automation window for that plugin, all of the parameters are enabled. If you're not sure how to do that on a Mac, it's Control Option Command. Click on this auto button, and that will either automate all of the parameters or enable all of the parameters or disable all of the parameters. And I'll show you what I mean. All of the EQ parameters are on the left because I just clicked on it. So I'm going to bring them all back over. Control Option Command on a Mac. And for Windows, it's now all the parameters on the right side. All of the parameters of the EQ plugin are automation enabled now. All right, so I've got the selection made. I'm going to go to Edit Window, Edit Menu, Automation, Write to All enabled. That means all of the current positions of these EQ parameters are going to be written right at that spot. And if I look at this playlist below, I should see I'm going to pull up one of those EQ parameters. We should see some breakpoints written there. Here's EQ. I'll just go to whatever. Pick any one of them. Yeah, so it wrote 2 breakpoints there, which is good. Now I want to change the EQ to be the EQ that I want this to morph into. I've already created a preset here, and I call it the phone FUT. So it's got all the highs and the lows filtered out, and the mids very exaggerated. And that's what I want the EQ to morph into. So I will go to Edit Menu now. Automation, glide to all enabled. A second ago I did write to all enabled. Now I'm following that up with glide to all enabled. All right, now if I start playback right before there, this is what it sounds like. Now you notice it only lasted for the duration of my selection, so I need to extend that out if I want to keep that new and improved setting. I need to extend that out. So I'm going to make a selection in the timeline. The EQ ends right there, and I want it to last, I don't know, 2 bars roughly, let's say right to about there. And I will write this ramped up EQ. I'm going to zoom in on that because I want the EQ to be a little bit more like that. Okay. Zoom out, and I want to write this EQ, exaggerated EQ, to that selection. And I will do Edit Menu, Automation, Write to All enabled. And now I want the EQ to morph back to a flat EQ. So I'm going to extend this selection. I'm going to shift click and bring it out to here. And I want it to, I don't know, I'm going to make it short. I'm going to make it come back to a flat EQ kind of quickly. All right, so I'm going to extend this back. I need to capture that old EQ setting in the selection. And I want to pull up the flat EQ, and we will go backwards. Edit Menu, Automation, Glide to All enabled. Okay, now, so if I start playback here, it should be flat EQ. It should morph into a very peaked EQ, last for the couple bars, and then it will morph back. Let's listen to it. And there you go. That's glide automation. You can use this on any plugin that you want, including virtual instruments. Things you have to watch out for, though, not all parameters have a variable value. In other words, they're not all knobs. Some things are switches. So a switch is either on or off. It's not going to be able to morph. So if you try to do this with certain plugin parameters that are switches, especially with virtual instruments, you may get a little, staggered response from those parameters that are switches. But anything that's a variable, a knob or a fader, this works awesome with. Thanks.